Hey guys, welcome to Reddit Brew. Today, I will be reading from the r/EntitledPeople subreddit, so let's jump into it. I told you there was one rule. Preface, I would like to apologize for the length of this tale, but in my humble opinion, it's worth the read. The story begins with myself and my dog in the backyard, to which we'd been banished because the inside of my house was being painted. Dogs and wet paint are a thing that do not mix well at all, and bath time for my pupper is akin to an all-out war. While we were outside killing time waiting for the house to be dog safe again, I discovered I very much had to go to the bathroom, and since my backyard is pretty well secluded and only really visible from above or by someone who's way up into my yard, I decided to go then and there. After the sigh of satisfaction, and before the stream had finished, I heard a very high-pitched whining sound, and when I looked up to see what the sound was, I saw a quad rotor drone floating above my backyard, presumably watching me. I don't really have a shy bladder, so I finished what I was doing, put myself away, and went back to my regular scheduled dog entertainment programming. Later that day after dinner, there was a knock on my door, and upon opening it, I saw a very uncomfortable looking police officer. He asked if I could step outside to speak with him, and I did so. He then asked me if I'd urinated in my yard recently, and when I raised an eyebrow and sort of looked at him like, seriously? He clarified that someone had called in and reported me for doing so, and the report had to be investigated since I live so close to a school. Close as the crow flies, there's a patch of swamp between my house and the school that is not easily navigable. With a car, it's closer to a mile to actually get there. I confirmed that I had, and showed the officer where I'd done so, and then told him that the only people that had seen me was my dog and someone flying a drone over my backyard, and I was reasonably sure my dog hadn't phoned the police on me. The police officer thanked me for my explanation and said I was very likely not in trouble, but he would take it as a favor if I just used the toilet for the time being. The next day, my dog was in the dog run by himself, sun worshipping while I was working. I had the door open just in case he started barking at the neighbors or what have you. Suddenly, he looses his fiercest war cry and starts making distress noises. I look outside to see what's going on, and there's a quad rotor buzzing around my dog run, tormenting my poor dog. I do what anyone should do in that situation and grab my hose, set the nozzle to anti-aircraft, high pressure jet for the uninitiated, and zap the drone with the hose. Drone ceases operation and falls to the ground in my dog run. It had been chewed on a little before I reclaimed the thing, but it seemed fine. I took my dog and the drone inside and figured I'd hear from someone sooner or later. About an hour later, my doorbell rings, and there's a 12 or 13-year-old kid on my steps with a bike helmet on and his bike thrown into my garden. I ask if I can help him, and he demands I return his drone. I ask him why I should, when all he's done with it, in my experience, is harass me. He starts foot stomping and throwing a shrieking tantrum my cousin, who is 7, had grown out of throwing many moons ago, demanding I give the drone back now. He actually concluded with, "And that's final." I found that frankly adorable and started laughing. I told him to come back with a parent if he wanted the drone back, because he's not capable of acting like a grown-up for this conversation, and went back into my house. The kid actually tried, and failed, to destroy some of my garden before picking his bike up and going home. Around 6 that evening, there's another knock at the door, and the kid's back with a man who's a little bit older than I am. I think he knew his kid was full of it, because he sheepishly asked me if I'd robbed his son and stolen his drone. I smirked a little bit at this and told him exactly what his son had done and how it happened to come into my possession. His face couldn't decide between chagrin and fury, and he turns and asks his son if this is really what happened. His son just starts bawling because he knows he's been caught, and the dad says, "When I bought you that drone, I said there was one rule. You don't bother people with the drone. phone. The dad apologizes on his son's behalf and says I can keep it. The kid emits a squawk of indignation and fury and says, "I'm telling mom!" There's a bit of a scuffle between them, while the dad wrangles the kid back into the vehicle they arrived in, and then the dad comes back and gives me his cell number with instructions to text him if his ex-wife should darken my doorstep. I said I would and waved goodbye, mostly to needle the kid because the twerp had it coming. A few days later, around lunchtime, I heard an ominous bang sound, followed shortly after by pounding on my front door. Not knocking, pounding. As I got closer to the door, I could hear high-pitched shrieking, and I connected some dots. Before opening the door, I found the drone dad contact in my phone and texted, "I think she's here." Then I opened my door and was greeted with the sight of an extremely irate, slightly younger than usual Karen. When the woman sees me, she starts screaming at me for stealing from her precious boy and how I am just the worst human being to grace the face of the earth in her estimation. She's got quite the head of steam worked up, and I can see almost immediately that I am not allowed to talk. So I decide to pour gasoline on this fire and send a follow-up text. "I can see why you got a divorce." Right when I hit send, this woman slaps the phone out of my hand and onto the ground and demand I look at her while she's talking to me. I go in for a non sequitur and say, "At me." This startles the Karen long enough for me to clarify. Talking at me. This isn't a conversation. It's worth noting that it was about 12:30 p.m. and this woman had Merlot breath so strong, I felt like I was getting a buzz just by being yelled at by her. She lets out a squawk and starts to puff up like a blowfish, readying another verbal salvo when I hold up a finger, stoop to grab my phone, and then speed dial the police non-emergency line on my phone, because it's pretty obvious how this is going to go. When she demands to know who I'm calling, I tell her calmly that I'm calling the police. Her response was, and this is a direct quote, "Fucking good. Let's see how the pigs deal with a mosquito-dicked weasel like you who steals from children." The operator actually heard that, and bless this woman's heart, she actually said, "I think I understand the nature of your call. Can you give me the address where this is happening?" I did, and the operator thanked me and said a response was on the way. While I was talking to the operator, I got a reply from the dad. "Oh God, tell me she's not drunk." Deciding I didn't need my phone slapped out of my hand again, I just sent a thumbs down reply and settled in to get yelled at incoherently until backup arrived. It wasn't all that long in coming, maybe 5 minutes total, before the boys in blue showed up. It wasn't until they pulled up that I noticed this woman had missed my driveway and actually winged my mailbox, pulling up onto my lawn. The police separate us, and I actually wind up talking to the cop who urged me to use the toilet like a civilized human being. I tell my side of the story, and then the officer I was talking to goes to assist the other officer who was trying to figure out what Karen was going on about, because she's getting steadily more belligerent and violent. She winds up slapping one cop and trying to bite the other before she's restrained and bundled into the back of one of the cruisers. At this point, the dad has pulled up and looks completely aghast. But he does confirm my side of the story with the police. The officers thank me and the dad for our time, and promise a tow truck is coming for the woman's vehicle. They put their heads together and do police things, and the dad leaves to go and do whatever it was he was doing before Karen reared her ugly head. I did get the last laugh though. While the police were filling out forms, or whatever it is police do after a horror show like this, I zipped into my house and grabbed the slightly chewed and no longer damp drone. Making sure Karen was watching, I sauntered over to my trash cans and tipped the piece of junk in and dusted my hands off before walking back inside. I'd already confirmed that the drone was dead from getting hosed, but I was going to throw it out either way. This just made me happy. Update. Okay, folks, I was planning on posting an update someday when certain details wouldn't have the doxing potential they do now. Also, I'm operating under the assumption that I shouldn't be blurting things out related to an active custody case. Unhappily enough, this woman has gone where no Karen has gone before. Straight past entitlement and right on into psychology folks are going to have a field day examining this woman, hopefully someplace far, far away from me. So earlier today, I went to the dog park at the same time I usually do. I'm a creature of habit. I take a break from work at this time to go to the dog park for this long, grab lunch on my way home, and hope my dog got enough exercise for me to be in a phone meeting without guerrilla attention-seeking warfare on the part of my dog. He's ripped a webcam off my desk before and completely derailed a meeting I was in for an entire hour while everyone had pet show and tell. There's a really large SUV with limo tinted windows sitting idle in the parking lot, which really isn't strange because the dog park's parking lot happens to be a very popular lunch spot with folks who work nearby. So I pitch my dog into the car. Even though he can jump up, he doesn't want to. I check my mirrors, nobody's behind me, throw the car in reverse and head for home. Realize pretty quickly that the SUV following uncomfortably close behind me is the same car I noticed and dismissed in the parking lot. And get that, creepy crawly, is this creepy or am I paranoid feeling? I assume it's a coincidence, so I don't wind myself into an anxiety spiral. But I continue on mission. I want lunch, and my dog will be very upset if he doesn't get his first out of the bag french fry. In between the dog park and my fast food restaurant of choice, there's a rather steep hill with a stoplight. Relevant piece of information, I drive a manual. For those who don't know, making a manual roll forward on a steep hill from a dead stop isn't precisely simple, and it's very easy to roll back a foot while putting it in gear. So naturally, while I was distracted trying to figure out what this SUV was doing, I rolled 6 inches back and gave the SUV a love tap because it was that close. Yes, the cars collided. No rational human being would consider that an accident worth bothering the police over. There simply wasn't enough room for my car to speed up to a point where anything more severe than a paint smudge could have happened. We were also in the middle of a busy intersection. My plan was to get off that godforsaken hill and pull over someplace where there's more room to maneuver than a 2-lane road on a steep slope. So I roll forward and look for a spot with enough space for 2 cars to pull over. Before I make it a car length, this SUV has started to lay on their horn and flash their high beams at me repeatedly. I proceed with my plan because road safety is a thing they teach in driver's ed. I pull in and exit my vehicle, bracing myself for whatever it is that's coming. And the SUV proceeds to sit there. No doors open, car just ominously idling. It's a tall enough SUV that I can't really see over the hood very well. And I'm not going to start something by walking around to the side of the car. A few minutes pass, and then 2 police cruisers roar up to us with sirens on and moving at an alarming pace for a run-of-the-mill not accident. The 2 officers block both of our cars in and exit their respective vehicles with weapons drawn. I put my hands up and start pretending I'm a statue because what the actual fluff is going on? Then I recognize the policeman I've spoken with a couple of times a couple weeks ago, and he returns the favor, followed shortly after by him putting the gun back in its holster. While I'm slowly unfreezing and trying to determine if I just wet myself, he turns to the other officer and says some numbers or something, which I guess in cop speak means nobody is actually in danger here, and she puts her gun away as well. Policeman I recognize says they got a 911 call about me road raging and fleeing the scene of an accident. I said, nope. I was just leaving the dog park with my dog in the car, and the SUV, who was much too close behind me, got a love tap. SUV started beeping and flashing like a psycho once I started driving to find a safe place to pull over, and they have just sat there since. Officer, with all due respect, if I was going to road rage, I probably wouldn't do it while my dog's unbuckled in the back seat. Cop I know looks at other cop, she nods, and they proceed over to the SUV. I think in situations where violence was reported, they work in tandem rather than separately. I don't know. When the officer reaches the SUV's window, the window window rolls down and his jaw drops. And then, I shit you not, people, he actually facepalmed. A woman starts screeching about how I rammed her car in reverse and then tried to escape. And it takes me a moment because the last time I heard this voice, it was slurring pretty badly, and she sounded sober now. But it's Karen, the same woman who drunk drove to my house, murdered an innocent mailbox, and yelled at me for something her ex-husband did. The officer regains his composure and asks Karen to step out of her vehicle. She says no, she doesn't have to unless she's been charged with a crime. The officer informs her that relates to search, not exiting your vehicle, and she really needs to get out of the vehicle now. Things devolve rapidly from there. In the interest of not making myself dumber by proxy, I will not attempt to relay Karen's discussion with the police, but I will mention the highlight of the conversation. Of course he put the car in reverse and hit me. Cars don't go backwards without being in reverse. If you want to go forward, you just let off the brake. The relevant portions of this discussion are: Karen actually spent money on a private detective to follow me around for 2 days. Lucky Sod got the easiest job on the planet. Once she knew what my daily habits were like, I don't go out often, #quarantine life, she took it upon herself to actually follow me anytime I went out, but never so close. Why did she do this? To gather evidence that would discredit me as a witness in her upcoming custody case. I hate to be that guy, but I really can't provide the conclusion to this saga, as all this just became serious business. I will finish the story when I am able. Suffice to say, Karen was a very naughty girl and broke just about every bail restriction she had to do what she did, and is now remanded to jail awaiting trial on a plethora of charges. Update 2. All charges against Karen have been dropped. She's been remanded to an involuntary stay at a state mental health facility. Still can't really share the truly crazy bits because doxing, but she does need some time in a nice, safe, padded room. She's not allowed to actually be in the same room as her kid for fear of his safety, which I have decidedly mixed feelings about. Responsible dad has permanent custody of the kid until Karen's been declared safe to re-enter society, or however you term someone who was once nuttier than a squirrel shit, being let back into the general population. Hopefully she gets her head back on straight and leaves me the hell alone. Great googly moogly of the highest power, the greatest of great googly mooglies. Really. OP got mixed into this mess all because of a brat spying on him with a drone? Jeez Louise. At least it ended on a good note, with Karen getting the very obvious mental health help and rehabilitation she needs, and the responsible dad getting full custody who can hopefully fix his kid's behavior now that the mother isn't in the picture. What a roller coaster. OP must have pissed off a witch in his past life or something, because he has terrible luck. If you guys didn't notice, this is the same OP from the other day, and we have read quite a few of his stories now, which you guys were asking me about, so I decided to just make a playlist that contains all of OP's stories. I'll link the Ulfer playlist in my pinned comment, as well as pop it up right now. But anyways, that is all from me today. I hope you enjoyed this batshit Karen saga. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe. I truly appreciate when you do, and I will see you in the next Reddit story. Bye!